chair of mobilization against war and occupation in Vancouver, Canada. All of us are here from different countries, different places. We are here to say no to NATO, no to war, no to racism. We are here to confront the warmongers right in the belly of the beast. This is an action initiated by the UNAC, the United National Anti-War Coalition, and joined together by a broad coalition of anti-war and social justice groups. We welcome everyone here. I'm looking forward to today's demonstration, to being loud together in the streets, to letting them know that anytime NATO steps foot here in Washington, D.C. or elsewhere, we will be there to denounce them for their war crimes, for the murders, for the destruction that they have caused for people from Afghanistan to Libya to Iraq, that they are trying to rage against the people of Venezuela. We say no more. When I say no, you say NATO. No! NATO! No! NATO! No! NATO! No! NATO! When I say hands off, you say Venezuela. Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! Hands off! Venezuela! We're a united group here today. We're going to do some shout outs so we know where everyone is from. I want you to make as much noise as you can. If you came down here from Boston, where are the Boston bus drivers and their allies? What about Baltimore? Where's Baltimore? What about all the way from Buffalo? Atlanta, Georgia. Albany, New York. Connecticut. Durham, North Carolina. Florida. New Brunswick. New York. Where's New York City? Newark, New Jersey. Where's New Jersey? Philadelphia. Richmond, Virginia. Where's Virginia? Anyone out here from Wyoming? He's right up here, y'all. How about anyone coming from Canada or anywhere else around the world? We have people here from around the world.
New Mexico.
And another person from the West, New Mexico.
Okay.
Woo! And I can't forget Argentina. Any other people from Latin America, South America?
Wales.
All right. Oh yeah, and Wales. And Wales, Belize, all over the place. You can see it as our voices. The warmongers, NATO, Trump, do not speak for us. We are people united against wars and occupations. And we're not going anywhere. Woo! So we have a beautiful program here for y'all today. We're going to bring some of the best speakers from around the U.S. up to this stage. And then we're going to carry our energy into the streets and march in front of many important institutions that are waging war on people at home and abroad. Then we're going to come right back up here. So I encourage you all to stay well hydrated. Let's keep our energy up. Let's keep chanting. Let's help each other out. You see someone that needs water, help them get water. You see someone that looks hungry, we can figure out how to get them food. We are here together to help each other out, to have a strong, successful rally today. When I say no, you say NATO. No!
NATO!
No!
NATO!
No!
NATO!
No!
NATO!
All right, so to start us off today, I welcome up Ajamu Baraka. Ajamu is the national organizer for the Black Alliance for Peace. Please give Ajamu a big round of applause. Woo!
All power to the people. All power to the people. We are here today, my brothers and sisters, comrades, friends, to build power for the people. Because we understand that we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility being here at the center of empire. We have a responsibility to the people of the world to put a break on the gangsterism and criminality of this state. We were in Venezuela just a couple of weeks ago, as many of you know. and we were given a mandate from the people in Venezuela. They said, our brother Jamu and the rest of the delegation, go back to the U.S. with this message. They said, we want peace. We want peace. However, we are prepared for war. Now, that's an important message, because what they were saying was that they were prepared to defend the integrity of their process. They don't want to engage in any kind of military conflict. So they said, go back and attempt to put a break on your country. Because if a mistake is made and there is an invasion, that they are prepared to defend their national dignity. So the mandate for us is clear, my friends, that we say hands off Venezuela, but we also say hands off all of the nations and processes that find themselves in the crosshairs of U.S. imperialism. So we are making the connection today between Venezuela and this other instrument of white imperialist power, NATO. We say that we have to identify the enemy. And the enemy is what we refer to in the Black Alliance for Peace as the axis of domination. The U.S., EU, and NATO. It is quite clear today that there is a contradiction between this axis of domination and the vast majority of the people on this planet. So our responsibility, my friends, is to build our numbers, to move this movement from one that is committed to peace, as important as that is, to one that is moving us toward a explicit anti-imperialist position. Pro-peace is important. It's a moral position, and we all want peace. But an anti-imperialist position provides us an understanding of the material reality and the material motivations for why we have the gangsterism coming from the U.S. So my friends, thank you all for coming out this afternoon. We're going to make our voices heard. We're going to commit, going beyond this gathering, to continue the process of building a powerful, people-centered, anti-war and anti-imperialist movement. Organize, my friends, build the movement, and understand that victory is ours. Thank you.
The new students for a democratic society at the University of South Florida, where she fought to end the contracts between U.S. Southcom, CENTCOM, and the USF. Currently, she is participating in Tampa Bay SDS campaign for non-compliance with the federal agencies at the university. She's also a rank-and-file Teamster at UPS in Tampa, where she campaigned for the no vote on the 2018 Teamster UPS contract negotiation. We got a fighter here. Let's hear from Elizabeth.
Hey everybody, how you doing today? So today I'm speaking on behalf of New SDS, and I gotta say I'm so excited to see so many people who are willing to stand against war and stand for the sovereignty of the Venezuelan people. I gotta say it's incredible. So New SDS is a multi-issue group. We try to do work in communities and on campuses to make progressive change. We tackle issues like queerphobia, sexism, reproductive rights, war, immigrants' rights, etc. So, you know, we cover a wide variety of issues. And what we campaign for changes from chapter to chapter, but we also address these issues through national days of action. In memory of Trayvon Martin, against the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, against the transphobic changing of Title IX gender language, for the revival of DACA, and demanding that Trump get his hands off Venezuela. I already know the answer, but I'd love to hear it again. Do you want war with Venezuela? Do you want war with Venezuela? Then I'm going to say say hands off. I want to hear you say Venezuela. Hands up!
Venezuela!
Hands up!
Venezuela!
Hands up!
Venezuela!
But how can young people possibly make a difference against a $716 billion defense budget? How can young people make a difference when the youth movement is small and relatively weak and these wars happen the world over? How can young people defend the sovereignty of the Venezuelan people? We can bring attention to these wars and intervention. On all of our campuses, we can send the most progressive message and help convince students of our anti-war politics. We can campaign for issues related to war. Many of our campuses have relations with the U.S. military, intelligence programs, recruiting on campus, weapons research and testing. And on my own campus, a grad student was involved in innovating torture techniques, which was revealed in the 2014 Senate Intelligence Committee report on CIA torture. We can fight back against these relations to weaken the military and support for it. Let me hear you say, money for jobs and education, not for wars and occupation.
Money for jobs and education, not for war and occupation.
Money for jobs and education, not for mass incarceration.
Money for jobs and education, not for mass incarceration.
But sometimes our campaigns don't even have to be explicitly anti-war. In Tampa, Florida, we're waging a struggle against the University of South Florida administration to win non-compliance with federal agencies, such as the DHS and therein ICE, such as Immigration and the Federal Bureau of Investigation and Customs and Border Protection. But we constantly and consciously draw attention to the origins of the so-called refugee and immigration crisis. Why are so many people immigrating from Central America and the Middle East? Trump would have you believe it's because the United States is just that good. It has nothing to do with foreign policy, and thus the Trump administration finds themselves justified in torturing, imprisoning, and killing immigrants. But in reality, the domestic and foreign policy of the U.S. reflect each other. The internal war of the U.S. against immigrants and working people is reflected outside of the U.S. and vice versa. These people immigrate because the United States and other NATO powers bomb or starve them to end progressive governments and super exploit their resources and working population. By addressing internal issues in our organizing, we can address the wars and intervention abroad. As a result of the aforementioned efforts, we can build a strong youth movement to challenge our local administrations. In the government largely. We can build to mass mobilize young people in the streets to force the change we need, not want, need. It is only by these measures that we can help end war. The original SDS some 60 years ago achieved this and was crucial in the efforts to end the war of U.S. aggression in Vietnam. So today, if Venezuela becomes the new Vietnam, then new SDS will surely rise to the challenge of defending the sovereignty of the Venezuelan people and building a movement to stand alongside the broad masses to challenge the imperialist foundations of this country. When I say hands up, you say Venezuela. Hands up!
Venezuela!
Hands up!
Venezuela!
I'm not convinced, y'all. You gotta get louder. Hands up!
Venezuela!
Hands up!
Venezuela!
Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Elizabeth. SDS. My name is Layla Awadala. Like she said, I'm coming from Minnesota, the place of the indigenous Dakota people, the resilient Dakota people, and the place of Ilhan Omar. Yeah! I'm here with my fellow friends, Palestinian activists and supporters. Raise your hand if you say Free Palestine! Free Palestine! Today is March 30th. Today is Land Day for the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people of Gaza have been marching for 1 year, along with a history of 70 years of occupation and resisting. This marks the day of 1 year of marching in Gaza, the Great March of Return. Gaza activist people, civilians have been marching and dying for over a year today, every Friday. They get up, they march, they're shot, they're killed, children are killed, hundreds are killed, thousands
girls are injured, these are not regular injuries either. They're injuries that change your life forever with no medical supplies, no hospitals. We need to speak up for the Palestinian people as well as the people of Venezuela, the people all over who are suffering from power, from occupation, from violence coming from this country. The people of Gaza have marched for 1 year against the most extremely violent, one of the most extremely violent military occupations, and they still get up and march. And it's a lesson for all of us to see how we can show up and be brave for each other. We can celebrate bravery. This whole week, I was terrified what might happen this day in Gaza. I was waiting to be waking up to the worst news possible. And now this morning when I woke up, I felt that fear in my stomach, but even more so, I felt the need to celebrate the bravery and resilience of the people in Gaza and all over. Because this bravery is something to be celebrated and to inspire us all over every day to show up for each other. So, hands off Palestine! Hands off Venezuela! Hands off! Thank you, and let's celebrate Land Day. Let's celebrate our bravery of the people all over around the world who are resisting every day. Thank you.
Of the Middle East in this modern time, you can't help but say the word Palestine. People there have lost their land, some have lost their home. They live in other countries, their freedom almost gone. Palestine needs her freedom. Palestine needs our love, needs our love. Palestine needs her freedom. Palestine needs our love. People there are rich, people there are poor. Some have education, so what are they fighting for? Fighting for their freedom, fighting for their land, fighting for their children. Let's help them make a plan, 'cause Palestine needs her freedom. Palestine needs our love, needs our love. Palestine needs her freedom. Palestine needs our love. There seems to be no answer to give us the reason why people cannot live, so no one has to die. We've got to take a stand for freedom, take a stand for truth, take a stand for justice. That's what we've got to do, 'cause Palestine needs her freedom. Palestine needs our love. Palestine, Palestine needs her freedom. Palestine needs our love. People of all countries, of every race and creed, we need a new beginning. Let us plant the seed. Plant the seed of love and let that love seed grow. Plant the seed for everyone so all the world will know that Palestine needs her freedom. Palestine needs our love. Palestine needs her freedom. Palestine needs our love. Now this is your last opportunity to sing together, to breathe together, for your hearts to beat together. David Schwartzman over there talking instead of singing. Don't let me call y'all out now. We're going to do an a cappella verse, a cappella chorus. Everybody ready? Palestine needs her freedom. Palestine needs our love. Palestine needs her freedom. Palestine needs our love.
But then he changed his mind and he said, well, if those other countries pay more. But you know what? Those other countries, the people there don't want to pay more for war. And guess what? We don't want to pay more for war either. So let's tell Donald Trump right here, no more money for war. 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 So that's what NATO is all about. It's all about war and violence. And you know, there's another way now that this administration, this guy right here, Donald Trump, is making war, and that is economic warfare. We just came back from Iran, and we see in Iran the same thing as we see in Venezuela. Economic warfare. We see this administration, this guy right here, boo, trying to make life miserable for millions and millions of people in Iran and Venezuela, and then turning around and saying, oh my goodness, there's a humanitarian crisis. We have to do something about that. Overthrow those governments. Boom. So we are here to say that whether it's the people of Iran, the people of Venezuela, or anywhere around the world where the U.S. is waging economic warfare, we say no to sanctions, no to war. No sanctions, no war. No sanctions, no war. No sanctions for war. So as peace-loving people, let us build our movement, connect it with all the energetic movements for the environment, the Green New Deal, the energetic movements against racism, against hate, against Islamophobia, and build a world where there is no war, where there is no economic warfare, and where NATO is indeed obsolete. Thank you.
Fighters for peace and social justice. We salute the peace-loving people in the United States, the U.S. Peace Movement, and in particular the U.S. Peace Council and the United National Anti-War Coalition, UNAC. Your initiative to hold this rally and protest march on the 70th anniversary of NATO, the biggest war machinery of human history, is of great significance. It takes place here, right in front of the White House, from where the U.S. presidents in the last 70 years, hand in hand with their other NATO states leaders, are committing crimes, interventions, coup d'etats, and imperialist wars around the globe. The World Peace Council is likewise 70 years old, with a history of struggles on the side of the poor and the oppressed, opposing NATO from the beginning, always based on the founding principles of the UN Charter and on the right of the peoples to determine alone and without foreign interference their destiny. From this historical rally in Washington, D.C., we unite our voices with the peace-loving people of the United States against the common enemy of our dreams and of our aspirations. We express our sincere solidarity with the victims of racial oppression and discrimination in the U.S., which is supposedly the land of freedom and the biggest democracy. We express our support to the demands of the US peace movement for cuts in the huge military expenditure, which reaches far beyond $700 billion per year, while we have impoverishment of the people inside the country and growing cuts in the social rights. The profits of the US war industry, even in times of recession and economic crisis, has been increasing at the expense of the working class people and of the peoples in the world as its victims. NATO is clearly serving the interests of the great monopolies and the multinational corporations. As a self-proclaimed world sheriff, it is expanding worldwide, and since 1999 has been actively and openly beyond its limits, acting as defined in their founding charter. NATO has a long record of subversive actions, military interventions, aggressions, and wars in all continents. NATO, which was founded 5 years before the Warsaw Pact, continues its aggression and its military adventures even 28 years after the dissolution of the Warsaw Pact. NATO was never a defensive organization. The fact became openly and widely clear 20 years ago during the 78 days bombing of Yugoslavia, during which the 50th anniversary of NATO took place again here in Washington, D.C. But what is NATO actually celebrating on 4th of April? The mess they have created in Yugoslavia 20 years ago, or in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in the Ukraine, in Syria, in Yemen? They're close to 60 years of machinations against Cuba, the regime changes in Latin America, or their open threats of military intervention in Venezuela today. For what is NATO proud in these 70 years? Currently, we are witnessing the clear and open maneuvers of the US administration, of the states of the Lima Group and the European Union to overthrow by economic sanctions and economic war, by actions of sabotage and other subversive methods, the legitimately elected government in Venezuela. At the same time, NATO is incorporating Colombia into its ranks, and it's pointing at Brazil for a potential new member in NATO, both neighbors of Venezuela. We state and shout loudly from the capital of the US, hands off Venezuela. The people are the only ones to decide about their fortune and their wealth of the country. The self-proclaimed interim presidents, who are nothing else but puppets, have failed in the past, and similar actions will fail in the future. Dear friends, NATO does not even refrain from a nuclear first strike option, as stated in its Warsaw summit 2 years ago. At the same time, the United States is withdrawing from the INF Treaty, creating new dangers for a new nuclear arms race. NATO is deploying tens of thousands of troops in Europe along the belt from the Baltic Sea to Bulgaria, with missile defense shields in Poland and Romania, encircling Russia and trying to contain it. The World Peace Council demands the dissolution of NATO as the armed wing of imperialism, and we struggle for our members in the NATO member states for the disengagement from it. We demand the closure of all foreign military bases in the world, particularly those of the US and NATO, which constitute 95% of the total in the world. We underline the demand of the World Peace Council for the closure of the US military base on the Cuban province of Guantanamo, which the US is using as an illegal prison as well. And we call upon the people in the United States to be alerted about the plans of their government and its allies in NATO and the European Union for the Middle East, and express our solidarity with the peoples of the Middle East in their struggle against religious fundamentalism, against mercenaries, and for the withdrawal of all foreign troops from their countries. We declare our solidarity with the people of Palestine and the right for an independent and viable state within the borders of pre-4th of June 1967 and with East Jerusalem as its capital, for the right of the return of the Palestinian refugees according to the resolution 194 of the UN, and the release of Palestinian political prisoners from Israeli jails. From Washington, D.C., the World Peace Council declares its commitment to struggle together with all peace-loving forces in the US and the world for a world of peace and social justice without imperialist exploitation and wars, where the peoples will be the real masters of their life and destiny. Thank you.
must put an end to the culture of war. As long as that greed that it kills folks for, as long as there's greed, there can be no peace. Imperialist bloodshed simply must cease. Hey, take to the streets in protest in the USA. Hey, hey, take to the streets in protest in the UK. Take to the streets in protest in the USA. Hey, hey, take to the streets in protest in the UK. Our war is here against hunger and greed and racist bloodshed on which fascists feed. Enter battle for homes and health. Soften up enemy to liberate our wealth. Hey, hey, take to the streets in protest in the USA. Hey, hey, take to the streets in protest in the UK. Tell me what I say. Take to the streets in protest in the USA. Hey, hey, take to the streets in protest in the UK. If all options are on the table, if all options are on the table, let's hear skull and crossbones drinking water from filters. If all options are on the table, let's hear boots on the ground and ladders meddling smoggy skies with windmills and solar panels. If all options are on the table, let's hear saws screaming propaganda and hammers chanting home, 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 homes, connecting 2x4s, overthrowing tents, sleeping bags, cardboard mattresses metastasizing beneath bridges on cold streets across the country. If all options are on the table, let's hear humanitarian intervention sounding like stock market style chatter, making free medical appointments for millions, toppling infant mortality, regime changing cancer, heart attacks, strokes. If all options are on the table, let's hear buckets of weaponized chicken, blockaded, supersized cannons of sugary water, sanctioned, coup d'etat, overthrowing deadly colonels and kings, removing obese, malnourished Americans from harm's way. If all options are on the table, these are our appetizers.
Centuries of the slaveocracy. That's why I saw a couple of people carrying these, and I'm glad to see you carrying these, because it's very important for us to understand that we are not just here opposing war, we are here opposing the slaveocracy. All you have to do is see a picture of those members in the opposition and in the assembly. They are all Anglo, every last one of them. Let's be clear about that. We are fighting racism and slavery in addition to fighting war and imperialism. So yesterday, about 20 of us went over to the Venezuelan embassy because we came in early. We came in Thursday, and we basically, well, there wasn't any traffic there anyway, but we basically blocked the entrance. And the Secret Service, tried to encourage us, or let us say, strongly encourage us to leave. And we said no. The people who are in there don't own that building. That's an occupation that they've done, and we ain't leaving. So we raised hell, and it just goes to show what 20 people can do. So let's just be clear about that. You know, if you have just a few people, but you have truth on your side, you have history on your side, and you have justice on your side, and you can do an awful lot. So coups in Venezuela are not new. They're a century old. And they go all the way through Chavez and up to the current state of Maduro. And they are not only in Venezuela. We just had to beat back one around Nicaragua just a few months ago. And of course, we all know that there's been a 60-year economic blockade of Cuba. So clearly, they're trying to put Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba, putting them down. And it was the Latin American struggle that gave us the most hope and inspiration 10 years ago as they were on the march. They were on the march. And the counter-revolution has begun. And let's be clear. Let's be very clear that this needs to stop. Look what happened in Brazil. My father was a CIA counterinsurgency operative who helped bring in the coup in 1964. So this is nothing new. You know what I mean? The United States has 800 and some bases around the world in other people's countries. 800. You know who comes in second? Russia with 8. So, this is an empire of the Darth Vader variety. And we know this. I'm gonna let it go right there, y'all. Peace, love, dub.
Venezuela. Sanctions, we know, is a weapon of mass destruction. From Africa to Latin America to Asia, it is a tool of recolonization and international terrorism. End the sanctions against Venezuela. The D12 movement is in solidarity with the Venezuelan people and their elected leadership headed by President Nicolás Maduro. U.S. imperialism and its allies are trying to make the Venezuelan economy scream so that the people in Venezuela can turn against their leadership. The same tactics that they're using against the Zimbabwean people since they decided to take back their land in 2000. Now, what happens is that when they're able to do that, the people turn against their own elected government. Why? They say, oh, we gotta eat. But if we have a revolutionary party in Zimbabwe, if we have a revolutionary party in Venezuela, they can help to beat all of that back, And that's what they're doing. Now, NATO. We must all be against NATO. NATO was that same group of people who refused to give African people on the continent a pen or a sheet of paper to fight for just nominal political independence. I'm not talking about economic independence, just nominal political independence. They said, all right, you don't need no independence. We can run your country for you. We can tell you what to do and how to do it. That those are the same people that are in Venezuela today. They're the same people who on April 4th, 1968, was it? The same, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun here. I'm accusing some people of doing something that we don't really have any proof for, all right? But they were started in April 4th, 1949, the NATO. But Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. What a relationship. I'm sorry, I can't accuse them of doing it, but that's what happened on April 4th, 1968, all right? Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we hook up Venezuela and Zimbabwe. All right, hooking up Venezuela and Zimbabwe is African Liberation Day. African Liberation Day has been celebrated from 1963 on May 25th every year. So this year we're coming right here. The December 12th movement is coming right back here on May 25th, 2019, right here. Okay, so we say, hands off Venezuela, hands off Zimbabwe, hands off Venezuela, hands off Zimbabwe. Thank you very much. We're
the ones that keep the voices of morality and justice alive. Because if we are not out here, then no one would be out here. But we're out here because we understand the historical nature of this country and of this world. When we talk about NATO, what you're really talking about are all the colonial powers that went in and colonialized South America, Central America, colonialized Africa, colonialized all of the Caribbean. So we understand what their agenda is about. And I got news for you, a leopard cannot change its spots. The world as we know it was built on this paradigm of racism, where they chose and worked to keep people impoverished, and they used the military in order to advance a racist agenda, in order to advance exploitation and poverty. That's why King talked about the triple evils of racism, poverty, and militarism. And that's what we're out here continuing to stand up against: racism, poverty, and militarism. And we demand that people be free in Venezuela, that people be free in Haiti, that people be free here in Washington, D.C., that people be free from this menace that sits over here in the White House, that people are free and standing up and declaring their own destiny, dignity, and human rights. All I want to say is I'm thankful for you being out here. A couple weeks ago, we were out here standing up for the people of Venezuela. We understand how all of this fits together. I was talking to a young man over there in brown skin, wearing a mega hat, reminding him that he don't know anything about his history. Because if he knew anything about his history, he would not be wearing it, but he would be using it to wipe. If you understand that the United States of America was built on advancing enslavement, that the Caribbean and South America was built on advancing enslavement so that a few could be rich at the great exploitation of others. In fact, when you talk about the Trail of Tears here in the United States, the Indian Removal Act by someone that this person wants to emulate, Andrew Jackson, it was to remove Native people from their lands so that you could open up new slave territory and exploit a genocidal program against some people. So think of that. Genocide against one people in order to carry out genocide against another people. That's what we're standing up against. We're standing up against the hypocrisy. We're standing up against the historical narrative that no one talks about. We're standing for justice, for freedom, for real freedom, not just for capitalist freedom, for real freedom, where the destiny of people really are lifted up and people find that they're free from the shackles of bondage and oppression. God bless you.
See something if you're standing in front of me. Turn to your left. If you're standing behind me, turn to your right. Face that building right over there. And I need you to chant with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. We will fight a rich man's war. 1, 2, 3, 4. We will fight a rich man's war. 1, 2, 3, 4.
We will fight a rich man's war.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We will fight a rich man's war.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We will fight a rich man's war.
1, 2, 3, 4.
We will fight a rich man's war.
All right, y'all. It's an honor to be here today alongside you in solidarity with the anti-imperialist people of the world, especially the people of Venezuela. Living in the United States, it's our duty to oppose these deadly wars, these deadly sanctions, these interventions that have killed millions of people throughout the world. We must resist the policies of imperialism and allow the people of the world to determine their own fate. It is our responsibility to do this.
The last time I was in Washington, D.C. for a national protest, I was 17 years old. It was 2007, and we were at a march marking the 4-year anniversary of the U.S.-led NATO war against the people of Iraq. I saw hundreds of Iraq vets against the war do a die-in civil disobedience. I saw 30 to 50,000 people take over the streets of D.C. And I thought to myself, this is it. This is what we need to do. We need to continue. If we just have more people in the streets, if we have more people protesting and rallying, that in and of itself will end the wars. But I was 17 and a little bit mistaken, because that's only half of our job. Half of our job here is to continue building these anti-war, anti-imperialist movements. But the other half, while these marches and protests are imperative in raising the consciousness of the people and making the issues of war imperialism central to the politics of this country, we need to do something else. These marches won't end the wars alone, because we live in a country run by the 1%, whose interests are placed above those of the people always. And being an imperialist country means colonial exploitation of people and places outside of our borders to bring in more profit for the people on top. And organizing in an imperialist country means that despite whichever party holds power, whatever person inhabits that house over there, whether he's a bumbling idiot from Texas, a smart cool guy from Chicago, or a misogynistic racist billionaire, it doesn't matter. It's the imperialist agenda that's followed. And I'm sad to say that for every year of my millennial life, the United States has been bombing, invading, sanctioning, and intervening in, destroying countries and people the world over. Hell, as we speak, little Marco, war crimes Abram, and Mr. Troika of tyranny Bolton himself are cooking up new ways to wreak havoc on the people of Venezuela. For months they've tried fake humanitarian aid interventions, poorly orchestrated opposition rallies, fake interim presidents, and fabricating a hunger crisis. They've imposed harsh sanctions and readied the troops. So what's it going to take to end these decades of wars? Aside from building the movements against imperialism, we have to continue to build up the workers' movements, the Chicano and Black liberation movements, the women's liberation movement, the queer movement, and it needs to be us, we the people who hold the power in the United States. Because the working class has nothing to gain from military exploitation abroad, only the 1% does. And that's exactly what the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela is all about. The working poor of Venezuela took control of their country in 2002, and ever since the United States has been trying to punish them for it. So it's imperative that we express our solidarity with the people of Venezuela, because the Bolivarian Revolution is a revolution which the workers hold the power, and that's what we need to do here if we want to end the wars of conquest abroad. And that scares the crap out of them over there. So friends, join us as we march